Tonight on Frontline, we explore the life of an English as a second language student. As Jonker, known to her friends and family as Manchu, a child born in India, moves from India to the Bahamas and ultimately to America. Language is a way for her to acclimate herself to her surrounding culture. Learn how students like Manchu grow up learning multiple languages in multiple regions of the world, all while holding on to the culture she began her life identifying with. What was life like in schools? What practices and policies are there to advocate for students like Manchu? And what about students who fall through the cracks in the face of language barriers? All that and more tonight on Frontline.
Frontline is made possible by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you. With major funding from the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, helping to build a more just world, and additional funding from the Park Foundation, committed to raising public awareness.
Dr. Kashyap Stroger was born in the Indian state of Assam in 1984 to Biren and Dolly Sarma. She is the oldest of her two siblings, Juri and Natasha. Jonker grew up speaking Assamese, the state language of Assam. Her parents, although able to speak English from their early childhood, spoke only Assamese to Jonker when she was a child. My parents really only spoke Assamese to me in the house because they didn't want me to forget my language, she recalled. As Jonker grew up, she learned English, Assamese, Hindi, and Bengali. At the age of 3, Jonker attended Holy Child School, a private school in Assam. Although the state language of Assam was Assamese, the national language of India is Hindi and English. However, those weren't the only languages spoken in India. Every state had its own official language. Every region had its own dialect. Even every tribe in India had its own language and dialect. However, because English and Hindi were the national languages, most citizens learned to speak either English or Hindi or both. By the time Jonker, known to her friends and family as Manchu, went to preschool, she was able to recognize the English alphabet and even spoke some English. Her parents taught her this before going to school because schools in India require an entrance exam before attending the school. Manchu went to an English-speaking school, so she had to learn English well enough to pass the entrance exam to attend that preschool. There were also Hindi-speaking schools and Assamese-speaking schools in the state in which she lived. According to Manchu, for students who struggled with English, the teachers would work with the students one-on-one until they could understand the curriculum. The teachers were able to do this because the teachers also spoke Assamese and English. So students who struggled with English, the teacher could just translate the curriculum to their language until such time as the child could speak English fluently. In the Indian schools, there were very little outside support for English language learners in these English-speaking schools, because parents had the option to send their students to all Hindi school or all Assamese school. Students who were sent to the all English school typically spoke English very well, and again, if they struggled, the teacher would work one-on-one with the student until they caught up. Being immersed in English, Manchu had very little trouble acquiring fluently the English language. However, at home, she still spoke only Assamese to her parents. Around the beginning of the 3rd grade, Manchu and her family moved to Nassau, Bahamas. Only wanting the best education for their daughter, Manchu was placed in a private Catholic school named St. Thomas in Nassau. Because she was more advanced, she was immediately sent to the 4th grade. During her secondary school years, she attended a private Catholic school, St. Augustine's College in Nassau, Bahamas. Due to the high price of tuition, only very wealthy children attended her private school. Because the official language of the Bahamas is English, only English speaking students went to her school. Although Manchu was both fluent in English and Assamese, by the time she began her schooling in the Bahamas, she recalled finding it difficult to understand them at times due to their accents and slang terminology. She found herself, over time, becoming used to their colloquialisms and heavy accents. She said that it was just a matter of time, of being immersed in their culture, that she could understand them well. In her, in her school, there were no programs for ESL learners, mainly because there were no ESL learners. However, this would not be true in the general Bahamas. Because of heavy immigration, the Bahamas saw a large influx of Haitian immigrants. Haitians, unlike Bahamians, didn't speak English as their first language. They spoke very broken French. So many of the Haitian children attended government schools where they struggled. Behavioral problems were an issue because students who didn't understand English also did not understand the curriculum. Manchu's mother was a teacher in one of these government schools and recalled the issues they faced with Haitian immigrant children. Because there was no program in place to support these students as they learned English, many students failed or dropped out. The ones who succeeded were the ones who acquired English language through being immersed in it. For Manchu, she never experienced this problem at her school. Eventually, Manchu would go off to college and decided to attend university in the United States. She attended the University of Missouri, Kansas City, where she achieved her first bachelor's degree in education. She was offered a teaching contract in special education from Eastgate Middle School in North Kansas City. By this time, she had met and married her husband, Tariq Strozier. She had assimilated to American life and spoke exclusively, except to her parents, in English. She conceived her first child 8 years ago. His name is Krishna. She began when he was young, speaking to him in both English and Assamese. She believed that teaching him two languages would be beneficial for him as he grew up. Being bilingual, she says, will open up more opportunities for him in his future. I want him to grow up and learn the language that I was taught when I was his age. At Eastgate Middle School, where Manchu taught, they use the pull-out method for ESL students. There is a dedicated ESL room for ELLs. There is an ESL teacher and one para for the ESL classroom. Students who struggle with English will be pulled out and placed in the classroom for instruction. ESL students who don't need the extra help of an ESL classroom remain in the general education classroom. However, these students are supported with an aid if necessary. According to Manchu, she never experienced, during her formative years of education, issues with language. As a product of wealth, she attended school with students who mainly spoke the language she spoke. Because her parents were trilingual, they were able to aid her in her language formation and helped her with language development. Assamese was her first language, but because she was immersed in English-speaking school from a very early age, she was able to adapt and acquire the language. Compared to her formative years, the school in which she taught at, Eastgate Middle School, provided much more help with students learning English as an acquired language. Policies were implemented specifically for ELLs. There were specific strategies used both in the general education classroom as well as the ESL classroom that aided students who struggled with English. As far as advocacy for ELLs at Eastgate, they had an individual who would be the go-between for the teachers and ESL parents. This individual would represent the parents of ESL students. There was a strong advocacy group for ELLs in this school. On top of that, the school offered classes to ELL adults during the evening hours for any adult who wanted to achieve their high school diploma. Manchu's experience as an ELL is quite unique, between learning Assamese and English in India, adapting to the English accent and slang of Bahamians, then moving to Midwest America. Manchu's idea and experience with language has had to conform to wherever she has lived. Now she is the proud mother of two. She desires that, in her home, she can teach her sons her first language. She wants to enrich their lives through language so that they can learn the lesson her father taught her. Never forget who you are or where you come from.